Kia ora koutou, thank you for joining me on this Saturday morning to talk about situating numeracy within math. So my name is Karen Chow. I'm the Learning Area Lead for numeracy with a focus on the COVID fish. I thought we'd start us off with a karakia. So please feel free to join me if you know this karakia. Unahia te pō whirimarama, tomo kia te ao whatu tangata. Tātai ki runga, tātai ki raro, tātai ahoro, homie, huie, tai kie. And I think it just speaks to how we're all coming together because we want to support our learners in the best way possible so that when they leave school, they are confident and they are also numerate. So the plan for this session is defining numeracy and defining maths, making sure we have that shared understanding. We're then going to look at NCEA numeracy and how it relates to Te MATAIAHO, the refreshed mathematics and statistics curriculum, before talking about the CPM or the common practice. At the end, I want to provide an exemplification that ties together all three of those concepts. Now, you may notice as well that there is, for some inexplicable reason, two cats on this particular slide. I am quite obsessed with cats, and that is something that I bring with me to my presentations. So those two cats that are on the screen right now are my very gorgeous girls, Aoife and Isla, and they have Irish names, not because I'm Irish, but because my partner's Irish. So just to start us off, some of you may have seen this diagram before when I've presented, but it does look a little bit different this time. So numeracy is the application of mathematics and statistics in a range of familiar and unfamiliar contexts. And we use maths and statistics to enrich understanding in other learning areas. The new numeracy standard that learners can use this year to meet the numeracy requirement to gain an NCEA qualification is sometimes referred to as NCEA numeracy or foundational numeracy. And it's made up of three process ideas. I usually colloquially refer to them as the formulate, use, and explain. And we've also got the 7 content ideas, which are aligned with the upper level 4 and lower level 5 of the current curriculum. Now, you may notice on my diagram in the middle that years 1 to 8 and beyond year 10 seem to be very small errors, but that doesn't indicate the importance of numeracy and also literacy from the moment learners enter a classroom to even beyond gaining the prerequisite. It's more of an indication of the area in which I work in. NCEA numeracy is a small part of a learner's educational journey, right? Numeracy should span across an entire learner's educational journey. And the thing that gives this particular point in time that weight is because it is credentialed. In terms of teaching and learning, though, we should be doing it at all stages. The other thing that I wanted to point out as well is that I will often refer to NCEA numeracy by going, please look at this standard, which may sound a little bit different when you're engaging in the learning area of mathematics and statistics, where that priority is around the learning matrix. The reason why I talk about the numeracy standard rather than the learning matrix is because there is that 1-to-1 ratio. And so the learning matrix and the standard are essentially the same. Now, NCEA numeracy will draw on the pedagogical approaches outlined in the common practice model, with the content of NCEA numeracy falling out of the teaching and learning courses you design using the New Zealand curriculum. So as teachers, we teach the curriculum of our learning area, and that should be our priority. And literacy, numeracy, mātauranga Māori should be embedded within our practice and fall out of that. Now, there will be some learning areas that will be more strongly associated with numeracy. So obviously, mathematics and statistics, because of the mathematical and statistics content we cover as part of our curriculum, or science, because there are elements of mathematics and statistics they use as a tool to help understand or describe scientific phenomena. There are also learning areas that maybe associate a little less strongly with numeracy, but they still need to be engaging in it, because when we don't make it explicit and clear that numeracy exists beyond the mathematics and statistics classroom, learners struggle to actually see it in their day-to-day lives, or to have that transference of mathematical and statistical skills. So this is a broad look at what numeracy is in general, and where NCEA numeracy, or co-requisite, sits within. Now you would think that I wouldn't need to define what is maths, but I kind of do, because of how it's being used in the literacy, communication and maths strategy. So this strategy was released by the Ministry in March 2022, and it outlined the ways in which the Ministry could respond to the declining literacy and numeracy outcomes for learners. These responses are seen through the refreshed New Zealand curriculum, Te MATAIAHO, and the Common Practice Model. The LITCOM math strategy sits across everything, and it shapes the development of practical guidance and tools. It gives us a direction. Now, within the strategy, they've defined maths in reference to the learning domain of mathematics and statistics, and also numeracy. So that learning domain of maths and stats is the responsibility of mathematics and statistics teachers, and all learning areas are responsible for embedding numeracy into practice. So this presentation is about where the new numeracy standard fits into the bigger picture that is referred to as maths. So first up, we're going to look at how numeracy, or NCEA numeracy, fits into Te MATAIAHO. So Te MATAIAHO can be used to refer to the general framework that all learning areas will use to develop their curriculum. It can also be used to refer to the purpose, big ideas, knowledge and practices for each of the 8 learning areas. Now, within the general framework of Te MATAIAHO, there is a section called the Learning That Matters. And I have taken a quote from that, which you can see on screen. And we can see that literacy and numeracy is called out as being explicitly described in each learning area in the curriculum. This is a departure from the 2007 curriculum, which doesn't make any explicit reference to numeracy. And so the framework of the refreshed New Zealand curriculum, Te MATAIAHO, uses a progression model with a UKD framework across all learning areas. I do apologise if you're already aware of this, but I just want to make sure that we all have an understanding of what the refreshed curriculum is. So this is a very broad brush look, and so we can see that Te MATAIAHO uses a progression model that uses the UKD framework. So learning occurs within this refreshed curriculum in 5 phases. So phase 1 is years 1 to 3, phase 2 is years 4 to 6, phase 3 is years 7 to 8, and possibly the one that is most interesting to secondary teachers, phase 4 is year 9 to 10, and phase 5 is year 11 to year 13. Now, at the end of each phase are progress outcomes, which are concepts learners have mastered at the end of the phase. Progress steps specify essential time-sensitive aspects of learning within each phase, called out at every year level. Learners can visibly demonstrate as meeting or not meeting a certain progress step after given multiple opportunities to demonstrate this knowledge in multiple ways. Learners who do not meet these progress steps will require accelerated support. Page 21 of Te MATAIAHO, the general framework for the curriculum, specifies that learning in literacy, communication and numeracy is presented as a progress step alongside the progress outcome for each learning area. Now, the UKD framework refers to the 3 aspects of a subject curriculum that is woven together to ensure that learning is meaningful for learners. So we've got the understand, which is a set of enduring ideas all learners can relate to. And while each understand may look different for learners at different phases, all learners should be engaging with these ideas regardless of their year level. The no and the K part of the UKD framework is context, or in the case of mathematics and statistics, the content that bring those big ideas to life. And these step up at each phase. The do are learners developing practices that enable them to think and act as experts, in our case in mathematics and statistics. The do within Te MATAIAHO step up as well. So the following slides will be about Te MATAIAHO, the learning area of mathematics and statistics, with a focus on how numeracy fits into that. So I am speaking to you today as mathematics and statistics teacher, so my focus will be around the mathematics and statistics curriculum, rather than talking more broadly around how numeracy is situated in other learning areas. This is obviously really important, but would require a whole other webinar or 12 to discuss that. Now, there have been 2 iterations of the draft refreshed mathematics and statistics curriculum. The release dates with those were in 2022. Another one was released in March 2023, and then the final one was released on Monday, the 15th of May this year. Now, the one that was released on the 15th of May is the final refreshed mathematics and statistics curriculum. It will be reviewed in 2025 when all the learning areas have had their curriculums refreshed, and it will be tweaked for coherence relative to other learning areas. Now, for all of the visual people out there, you may see that I have a very beautiful picture on the slide that is not a cat. And it's designed to help us think around how those understand, knows, and do's in our learning area connect together. And so you can see at the bottom that we've got the 6 strands or content areas, which are the know part of the curriculum. And they've developed over time, and together they form the learning area of mathematics and statistics, which is that outline. And so you can see that those 6 knows feed into that evolving history. Now, with those 6 strands, learners can be supported to develop practices that enable them to think like and behave like a mathematician and a statistician, which is a do part of the curriculum. And so you can see that is within the petals, and they are all coloured to match up with the do's that are within the refreshed curriculum. So, for example, for our learners to think like and behave like a mathematician and statistician, they can represent situations mathematically and statistically using symbols, diagrams, physical tools, graphs, or technology. And they can see that the learning is not siloed. They can make those connections between mathematical and statistical concepts and also connect to other learning areas as well. Now, you may see as well that on the sides we have 2 po. Got Mātauranga Māori and Mātauranga Mathematics and Statistics. Each of those po has equal stature. So Mātauranga Māori has status of its own and may have concepts of cultural significance that have mathematical or statistical elements. But those concepts are not validated because of the mathematics within it. And so, for example, tuku panels have their own pūrākau and inherent value, with the geometric transformations within them are potentially part of the pūrākau, but the value of tuku panels is not validated because of the mathematics within it. Mātauranga Mathematics and Statistics is valuable as a way in which we make sense of the world using representations, calculations, and digital tools. Each of those po can exist on their own, and one does not validate the other. Now you can see that those 2 po are coloured in the understands of the curriculum. So learners should be able to relate to and access these concepts. You also see at the top of the flower that we've got 3 other understands. We've got change and variation, patterns and structure, and logic and reason. Now, all of these ideas, UKD, is drawn together by He Whare Punga Were Were, or the spider. The understand, know, do are intricate, complex, interconnected, and strong. Now you may also notice as well that there is an email address at the bottom of the slide. If you do have any feedback about the refreshed curriculum, please contact that particular email. Now, if we examine the big enduring ideas or the understand and te MATAIAHO in our learning area, we notice one of which is referred to in this picture as patterns and structures. Now, each of the understands has a whakatauki associated with it. The whakatauki associated with this big idea is whiria te kaha tua tini tini, whiria te kaha tua mano mano. You may notice that this is the same whakatauki used for the new numeracy standard. This is by design, so as learners develop numeracy and when they master the skills to be foundational in numerage, because of the patterns and structures they see in the world around them, this allows them to weave a rope strong enough to get them where they want to go, do what they want to do, and be what they want to be. And this is reflected in the numeracy whakatauki. In the context of the numeracy standard, this whakatauki speaks to the many threads, academic, social, emotional, and cultural, that learners experience when they make mathematical and statistical decisions about situations in their daily lives. The process ideas and content ideas of the numeracy standard are woven together to create a strong whiri that enable learners to access further learning, develop important life skills, and engage in employment and in their communities. Now, patterns and structures is only one of the big ideas in mathematics and statistics. Numeracy is part of what you do and falls out of a sound teaching and learning program. And we also need to ensure that our learners have access to the entire mathematics and statistics curriculum in our classroom. Numeracy is at all phases of learning in mathematics and statistics. Just like the understands or big ideas are at all phases of learning. The content ideas place the new numeracy standard at a foundational level. And as I said earlier, the new numeracy standard aligns itself with the current curriculum at upper level 4 and lower level 5. And we encourage that learners sit the assessment when they are ready. One of those aspects of readiness is the academic level that the student is at, which is that they have mastered curriculum level 4 and they're working within level 5. Relative to the refreshed curriculum, the content ideas sit within phase 3 and phase 4 and no. You'll also notice that in this final edition of the curriculum that the phrases I know that and I know how to have returned to the no's. Now, if I bring up this on the screen, this is one of the content ideas within numeracy, and it comes from the Unpacking Numeracy document. Now you can see that outlined are the parts of phase 4 that are reflected in the content ideas for operations on numbers. You would regularly revisit these ideas in your class and develop learner understanding of these concepts by using the curriculum to design your learning. You would also be supporting the development of foundational literacy. Italicized are the first 2 bullet points, as these are within the process ideas where learners need to use mathematics and statistics and formulate an appropriate approach. You may also notice as well that multiply and divide 2 fractions has not been highlighted as being in the standard. And in fact, in Unpacking Numeracy, it explicitly states that the skill falls outside the benchmark of foundational numeracy. However, as a teacher of the mathematics and statistics curriculum, you would include this in your program. Whether it's a greater focus in your Year 9 or Year 10 program may depend on how you see numeracy positioned within your course. There will be more detail for mathematics and statistics forthcoming so that the progression learners make towards the outcomes. So if we take a sideways step from te MATAIAHO and look at the literacy and communication and math strategies action plan, part of the common practice model is that the ministry will develop and pilot a full end-to-end maths teaching and learning program for schools that aligns with the common practice model and provides step-by-step sequencing of learning experience for akunga in years 0 to 10. So there will be a more, what I like to call a granular look at the detail of how learners meet those progress outcomes within a phase. Now, this work around the sequencing is currently underway, and there's also a move to situate the new numeracy STEM more strongly into Te MATAIAHO in the step-by-step sequencing by having a shared language and using statements from the step-by-step sequencing within the content ideas of unpacking numeracy. The reason why we want to do this is to help people see how learning feeds into the content for foundational numeracy and how this content can be developed beyond foundational numeracy. Now, the common practice model comes out of the LITNUM maths strategy. The purpose of the common practice model is to embed effective literacy and numeracy practices into classrooms from early learning all the way to year 13. Now, where the curriculum is mandated, the common practice model is currently not mandated, but it speaks to how we can teach. And these are the shifts that will support our learners to be even more successful in mathematics and statistics. So in March 2023, the pedagogical approaches for the common practice model was released. The pedagogical tools which provide practical guidance of what teachers can do that will be related to each of these approaches will be released later this year, along with guidance for schools and school leaders. You'll see some immediate relationships between the pedagogical approaches of the common practice model and Te MATAIAHO. So, for example, investigations is highlighted as a pedagogical approach that you can engage in with your learners, finding or designing tasks which are open and accessible, as well as variety and duration from short contained tasks to longer-term investigations. By using an open task with learners and knowing when to provide the appropriate extensions or scaffolds, we develop how learners think as mathematicians, which is the do part of the book. Now, it is important to note that the pedagogical approaches and the do aspects of Te MATAIAHO aren't a one-to-one relationship. You can see here that within the pedagogical approaches for maths, if you are doing investigations, you are likely drawing on what you know about your learner, and you are most likely being culturally responsive and sustaining and therefore supporting a core relationship with maths. The common practice model is a model that helps everyone embed literacy and numeracy using effective practices. The pedagogical approaches are a framework from which the pedagogical tools will be developed. Now, the new numeracy STEM was developed first, and therefore there are more resources available for it, including the effective practices to support numeracy. These practices look at how teachers could support numeracy in their classroom across all learning areas. Now, one of the effective practices, promote a growth mindset and have a positive disposition to numeracy, aligns with a pedagogical approach supporting akonga relationships with math. Cool. So one of the things that we can see here when we zoom in on that particular effective practice is to challenge the math and push back against the commentary such as "I can't do maths," and in leveraging that power of "yet." I can't do maths yet, which is different from "I can't do maths full stop," and resilience in our learners and having high expectations of them. The pedagogical approach reflects this by saying learners develop positive and functional relationship with maths when kaiako notice these emotions and use them as signals to encourage akonga to persevere, learn from mistakes, try different pathways, or discuss the task with others. And the effective practices that support numeracy and pedagogical approaches reflect each other. So another example is investigations in the common practice model and integrate numeracy into rich open learning experiences. Now, once the pedagogical tools are released, go with pedagogical approaches, there will be a review of the effective practices document to ensure that there is that clear linkage to the common practice model. So the new numeracy standard sits within each of Te MATAIAHO, all of the learning areas, and Te MATAIAHO, the learning area of mathematics and statistics, to its UKD framework. The content ideas within the numeracy standard align with phase 3 and phase 4, with a more detailed step-by-step sequence to be released as part of the common practice model. The effective practices that support the new numeracy standard are reflected in the common practice model's pedagogical approaches, with the pedagogical tools that sit within the approaches to be released later this year. These work streams are connected and are designed to improve outcomes for our learners by ensuring that the learning that cannot be left to chance is covered, which is MATAIAHO, and we're continually reflecting on how we teach, which is supported by the common practice model. And we understand the foundational level of numeracy our learners need to survive and thrive, whatever pathway it is they choose moving forward. So one of the things when I was teaching was all of these frameworks, all of these documentations are all really well and good. But what does it actually mean when I am in the classroom and I am teaching these kids? How do these documents support me? How do I link back to them? So you'll see up on the screen, I have an example up. It is of an open and close sign. If you haven't seen this sign before, it is incredibly cool. You'll notice that there is a hyperlink on the words open and close sign that does take you to a video, and as Robin said earlier, this PowerPoint will be shared with you so you can have a click on it. And essentially, if you rotate one of the cogs, it will change from the open sign to the closed sign. But if we were to give this to learners as a prompt and have them observe and go, well, actually, what is it that I notice? And what is it that I wonder? And the idea of I notice and I wonder is to provide students with a situation or setting and encouraging them to see through a mathematical lens, make those mathematical observations and pose mathematical questions. It also encourages learners to discuss and communicate mathematically. Is this something that you could have your learners investigate? How could you extend this activity? So, for example, one of the things that I first noticed when I saw the sign was the fact that it says open and close, but I thought, well, no, most signs are closed with the D on the end. So if I was to do that, what would it look like? How could I do it? And the other thing is that when learners are having those conversations, it's a real skill to know when to step in and scaffold. So if they're sitting there in silence, what can you do to support them? So for example, if a learner is going, I don't really notice anything, encourage them to go, well, what is it that you can just see that you think is really obvious? Sometimes the things that we think are really obvious is not shared by everybody else. So one of the things that really stood out to me when I first saw this was the fact that they have screws on each of those letters. And straight away, being a maths teacher, I thought, centre of rotation. So how does this link up with Te MATAIAHO, the common practice model, and the new numeracy standard? So you can see here that I have taken out snips from Te MATAIAHO, our learning area of mathematics and statistics. And we can see that it relates to, one of the understands it relates to is the patterns and structures. And we're making that observation and relating it back to mathematics and statistics. If we also look at, I believe the no comes from phase 3, and we're looking at invariant properties of 2- and 3-dimensional shapes that do not change under different transformations. This particular transformation here is around rotation. And there's rotation within the letters, but there's also rotation within the cogs themselves. And as I said, this could be an investigation, or it could be a starter into a lesson where you are looking at rotation. Turning to the common practice model, this comes from communicating in maths, and within that there is a fair amount to unpack. So this requires learners to have an environment where they feel comfortable working and communicating together. and going, well, what does good teamwork look like to enable individual understanding? And finally, how does it relate to the numeracy standard itself? So again, you can see that at the bottom, there is that snip that has been taken from Unpacking Numeracy. And it relates to transform objects to design for purpose, in this case, rotation. There is always the question, of course, is that, hey, we've developed this potentially small activity, and we can see how it relates to Te MATAIAHO, and see how it relates to the common practice model, and I can see how it relates to the numeracy standard. But what I want to know is, how does this support them with the assessment? Because while teaching and learning is incredibly important, and there is the aspect of summative assessment as well. Some of you may recognise the open and close sign from the bank of questions that NCEA developed. And one of those questions is, in fact, this one here. So this question is in a style consistent with previous numeracy assessments. So part of our support for learners is their academic readiness, right? Have they mastered level 4 of the curriculum and they're working within level 5? But there's also that assessment readiness as well, right? How does learning that happens in the classroom translate to responding to an exam question? How do they differ, and what opportunities are there for discussion within class versus expectations in the assessment? It is important to acknowledge that our role is not solely in preparing our kids for assessment. It's to ensure that they are confident mathematicians and we're supporting them using effective pedagogies. And so you can see here that in the question that's been written, it does say, in what direction does the N need to turn in the word open to be the S in the word close? And if they are having those rich discussions around what they noticed and what they wondered, this should be a question that they can answer in quite a straightforward way. And it may be something that you present to learners at the end of the class if you've opted to do this question as a start. Here is the answer that has been provided on the NCEA marking schedule. And it does say, except it should say anti-clockwise, 90 degrees. Or it also says rotating clockwise 270 degrees. Either response is technically correct if we're only focusing on the letter N and S, but we also need to think about the context of this as well, and why clockwise 270 degrees wouldn't make sense. So this is the bank of numeracy questions that was developed by NCEA. So within that particular link, there are 35 questions that are available. And NCEA has also since released to their members, I believe, 65 further questions that you can access on their secure site. Now, one of the things that I did say in the last slide is around the fact that we are teachers of a mathematics and statistics curriculum. We're not just teachers of this numeracy learning matrix or this numeracy standard. And you can see as well how I've picked out one of the questions from that bank and kind of go, well, what are the ways in which I can really use this as a rich resource for my learners? So the bank of numeracy questions that they have available does reflect the style in which learners are assessed in, but it can be used for so much more than that. It can be used to provide a greater understanding of the breadth of content and process ideas that are within the numeracy standard. I think the writers of those questions did use the current curriculum at level 4 and lower level 5, but the questions haven't been moderated by NCEA. It can, however, still be a source of inspiration for the development of questions that cater to your local context. So some of the feedback that was received was, oh, this question doesn't speak to me or my learners. We do encourage you to draw on the funds of knowledge that your learners bring and also on your local context. But we're also preparing our learners for the world beyond, right? They're not always going to be living in the same situation that they will always be in. So it may be that you see a question and you go, oh, I don't know about this one. But what you can do is you can go, well, what is a skill that this question is looking at? Right? And what is something within my local context that can support learners to show that they have mastery of that skill and then be able to transfer it to a context that may not be so familiar. You may use these questions as starters or through your lesson or to finish off your lesson. They can also be used with other learning areas to help them understand how they can support numeracy. This is probably a little bit outdated because the Minister did make her announcement on the 19th of April, which was quite some time ago. But essentially it looks at the three main things that she announced, which was around the mandatory implementation of the refreshed New Zealand curriculum. So mandatory implementation for all refreshed learning areas has been pushed out to 2027. The exception to that is mathematics and statistics and English curriculums. The Minister has said that the areas mathematics, statistics, English, literacy and numeracy are areas of importance. The second part of her announcement was around the NCEA change program. So the mandatory implementation of the new NCEA Level 1 will occur in 2024, which is next year. However, the mandatory implementation for NCEA Level 2 will not occur until 2026. It does mean that your learners who move into Year 11 and do NCEA Level 1 next year will move back to the current system in 2025. The other one was the announcement that she made around literacy and numeracy for NCEA. So there is going to be a mandatory implementation in 2024 around the literacy and numeracy co-requisite. So the co-requisite will be via the Common Assessment Activity, which assesses the new numeracy standard, or a set of curated numeracy-rich tag standards. This particular arrangement will be reviewed at the end of 2025. So 2024 and 2025 are considered a transitional period. The hot topic, of course, is what is the set of curated tag standards, and that is currently going through the Minister, who will have the final decision around what they are with advice from the Ministry. The announcement will have obviously some implications for literacy and numeracy. Now, you may have noticed with respect to that first question that I put up, that some of the new NCEA Level 1 standards have a numeracy tag. Now, this tagging that you see currently is for schools who are piloting the new NCEA Level 1 in 2023 only. The full list of tag standards for 2024 and 2025 is yet to be released. There is also the question as well around the portfolio option. Sometimes people refer to the portfolio option as a package of unit standards or the 266 series. Now, the portfolio is available for schools as it doesn't expire until 2026, but this wasn't mentioned in the Minister's announcement as one of the methods to meet the co-requisite in 2024 and 2025. The future state that we want to move to is the use of the common assessment activities. Now, if you as a school opt to use TAFE standards only, there are some considerations that you need to keep in mind. So in 2024, learners will need to gain 60 NCEA credits from anywhere, plus 10 literacy credits and 10 numeracy credits. So those 10 literacy credits can be from the common assessment activity, or they can be from the set of curated tag standards. Any credits that are tagged with numeracy will be attributed to the numeracy co-requisite first. Any remaining standards that learners achieve that are tagged with numeracy will go towards the 60 required for NCEA level 1. So it means that if your school opts to use the tagged standards only across both literacy and numeracy, it means that learners will effectively need to gain 80 credits. Right? So that is something to keep in mind if that is the route that your school would like to go down. How will this impact our current year 11 and year 12 learners? Now, any learner who has met the literacy and numeracy requirement already will have this honoured. So for example, if you have a learner in year 10 this year, and they have achieved 10 credits in mathematics and statistics, and those are tagged with numeracy, that means that they have met the numeracy requirement and they will not have to undertake the co-requisite. And there is something to be mindful of though. So you may have noticed that as part of the Minister's announcement, she did flag that the new NCEA level 1 mathematics and statistics standards would most likely be tagged with numeracy. Assuming that that is the case, just be aware that there is an exclusion between the current 1.10 and 1.11 and the new NCEA 1.1. Now, for learners currently in year 11 and year 12 who have not yet met the numeracy requirement for NCEA, from 2024, they will need to meet this by the CAA with a new set of tag standards. So that was my entire presentation. Thank you so much for joining me and Robin today in this quarter.